The gunshot echoed through the canyon just as Nathan Foster realized he had been trying too hard at everything in his life, including staying alive. He pressed his back against the red rock wall of the narrow gully outside Yerington, Nevada, his horse nowhere in sight after bolting at the first crack of rifle fire. The year was 1884, and Nathan had spent the better part of his 26 years believing that everything worth having required constant, deliberate effort. Love, respect, success, even survival. Nothing came easy, and he had worn that philosophy like armor, keeping people at arm's length while he worked himself half to death on his small ranch, 10 miles outside of town. The bandits who had ambushed him on the dusty trail were after the money he was carrying from the cattle sale, but Nathan had other plans. He checked his revolver, counted his remaining bullets, and prepared to make his stand when he heard the most unexpected sound. A woman's voice, sharp and commanding, cutting through the afternoon heat. "You boys planning on robbing every traveler on this road, or just the ones too stubborn to take the main route?" Nathan risked a glance around the rock. A woman sat atop a chestnut mare about 50 yards away, her posture relaxed, despite the 3 armed men now turning their attention toward her. She wore a practical riding dress the color of desert sage, and her auburn hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense braid. Even from this distance, Nathan could see she was young, probably around 22 or 23, with the kind of steady gaze that suggested she had seen more of life than most women her age. "This ain't your concern, lady," one of the bandits called out, his rifle still trained in Nathan's general direction. "Ride on." "Cannot do that," she replied, her voice carrying easily across the dusty space between them. "That man you are shooting at owes me money, and I will be damned if I let you kill him before I collect." Nathan frowned. He had never seen this woman before in his life, but something in her tone made him keep quiet and watch how this played out. "You can collect from his corpse," another bandit said, and the 3 men laughed. The woman sighed, and Nathan saw her reach into a saddlebag. When her hand emerged, she was holding what looked like a stick of dynamite. His eyes widened. "I was hoping to avoid this," she said conversationally, "but I have a short temper and a long memory. You boys have about 10 seconds to mount up and ride out of here before I blow that rock pile next to you sky high. It will not kill you, probably, but you will be digging stones out of uncomfortable places for the next month." The bandits exchanged glances. Nathan could see their calculation. Was this woman bluffing? He noticed her thumb moving, saw the glint of a lit match, and decided that no, she absolutely was not bluffing. Apparently, the bandits reached the same conclusion. They scrambled for their horses with impressive speed, cursing and shouting threats that faded as they galloped away. The woman calmly extinguished the fuse and tucked the dynamite back into her saddlebag. Nathan emerged from his cover, holstering his revolver, and approached cautiously. Up close, she was even more striking than he had first thought. Her eyes were a remarkable shade of green, and there was a spattering of freckles across her nose and cheeks. She regarded him with an expression of mild curiosity, as if she had not just run off 3 armed men with nothing but nerve and explosives. "I do not owe you money," Nathan said, which was perhaps not the most gracious way to begin, but his heart was still pounding from the attempted robbery. "I know," she replied, "but they did not. I am Teresa Dalton, by the way. People call me Tess. Nathan Foster." "I appreciate the help, but that was a hell of a risk you took," she shrugged. "The dynamite was a bluff. Well, half a bluff. It was real enough, but I am not actually crazy enough to set it off that close. Still, men with guns are often men without much thinking power. Fear works better than reason." Despite himself, Nathan smiled. Where did you learn that? My father worked in the mines near Virginia City before we moved down here. I picked up a few things. She glanced around. Your horse run off at the first shot. Mine is reliable. I can give you a ride back to town. Nathan hesitated. He had been planning to track down his horse, salvage what was left of his dignity, and return to his ranch to nurse his wounded pride in solitude. That was what he always did. Keep to himself, handle his own problems, maintain that careful distance from everyone. It required effort to let people in, effort to maintain relationships, effort to pretend he cared about the social niceties that seemed to come so naturally to others. But the sun was starting its descent toward the horizon, and his horse could be miles away by now. I would appreciate that, he said finally. Thank you. Tess patted the space behind her saddle. Climb on then. Fair warning, Rosie here does not usually carry two, so you will need to hold on tight. Nathan mounted up behind her, acutely aware of the propriety he was violating. A man and an unmarried woman, riding together like this, would set tongues wagging in Yarrington. He tried to maintain some distance, gripping the back of the saddle awkwardly. Good Lord, Tess said after they had gone about 10 feet. You are going to fall off and crack your skull open if you keep sitting like that. Put your arms around my waist and hold on like a normal person. I do not want to impose or make you uncomfortable. You are making me uncomfortable by being ridiculous. We are not in a church social, Nathan Foster. We are on a horse, and I would prefer to arrive in town with the same number of passengers I started with. There was something in her matter-of-fact tone that made Nathan relax slightly. He wrapped his arms around her waist, feeling the warmth of her through the fabric of her dress. Rosie started forward at a steady walk, and they rode in silence for a few minutes. So what brings you out this way? Tess asked. The main road is safer and faster. I like the quiet, Nathan said. Fewer people. Fewer people means fewer witnesses when bandits decide to rob you. I can handle myself. Oh, I could see that. You were handling yourself real well when I showed up, Nathan bristled. I had a plan. I am sure you did. How many bullets did you have left? 4. And there were 3 of them, all with rifles, all behind cover. Your plan would have gotten you killed. Maybe, but at least I would have gone down fighting on my own terms. Tess was quiet for a moment, and Nathan wondered if he had offended her. Then she said, You are one of those men who thinks asking for help is the same as admitting weakness, are you not? The accuracy of her observation stung. I did not ask for your help. No, you did not. I offered it freely, which is how help usually works. Most people say thank you and move on. They do not sulk about it like someone stole their favorite toy. I am not sulking. You absolutely are sulking. I can feel it radiating off you like heat from a stove. Despite his irritation, Nathan found himself almost smiling again. There was something refreshing about her bluntness. Most people in Yarrington treated him with careful politeness, tiptoeing around his reputation as a hard man difficult to know. Tess Dalton apparently had no such concerns. Why did you help me? He asked. Why does anyone help anyone? I saw someone in trouble and I could do something about it. Does there need to be more reason than that? Most people would have ridden the other way. Then most people are cowards or fools. Besides, those bandits have been harassing travelers on this route for weeks. Someone needed to run them off, and the sheriff is too busy drinking himself stupid to do anything about it. They crested a small rise, and Yarrington came into view below them. It was not much to look at, just a collection of wooden buildings clustered around a main street, with houses and smaller structures spreading out from the center like ripples in a pond. But it was home, or as close to home as anywhere had ever been for Nathan. You can drop me at the livery, Nathan said. I need to see about getting my horse back. Tom at the livery is useless, Tess replied. I will take you to my place. We have an extra horse you can borrow to go search. I cannot accept that. Why not? Nathan struggled for a reason that did not sound as stubborn as he felt. It is too much. It is a horse, Nathan. You borrow it, you bring it back. This is not complicated. She guided Rosie through town, seemingly unconcerned with the stares they were attracting. Nathan saw Mrs. Henderson pause in sweeping her porch to watch them pass, her eyes wide with curiosity. Old man Garrett actually stopped mid-conversation with the blacksmith to gawk. Nathan felt his shoulders tense. Let them look, Tess said quietly. Small towns run on gossip. Give them nothing to actually talk about and they will invent something worse. You seem to know a lot about small towns. I grew up in them. My father moved us around following work. Virginia City, Carson City, now here. I have lived in enough places to know that people are the same everywhere. They will judge you no matter what you do, so you might as well do what makes sense to you. They turned off the main street onto a smaller road that led toward a modest house on the edge of town. It was well maintained, with a small barn out back and a garden that showed signs of careful tending. Tess dismounted and helped Nathan down, then led Rosie toward the barn. Wait here, she said. I will get you that horse. Nathan stood in the yard, feeling awkward and out of place. Through the window of the house, he could see someone moving around inside, probably Tess's family. He wondered what her father would think about his daughter bringing home a strange man. Wondered if there was a mother, siblings, perhaps even a husband. That last thought brought him up short. He had not asked if she was married. She was not wearing a ring, but not all women out here did. Why did it matter to him anyway? Tess emerged from the barn leading a gray gelding that looked steady and reliable. This is Sterling. He is old, but he has endurance. You should be able to cover a lot of ground before dark. How much? Nathan asked, reaching for his wallet. Tess waved him off. No charge for borrowing, just bring him back in one piece. I insist on paying. And I insist on you not paying. Nathan Foster, you are possibly the most stubborn man I have ever met, and I have met a lot of stubborn men. You do not even know me. I know enough. You would rather do everything the hard way because you think effort equals worth. You probably work yourself half to death on that ranch of yours, refusing to hire help because you think it makes you weak. You come to town as little as possible because maintaining friendships requires effort, and you have convinced yourself that you do not have time for that. You are so busy proving that you can handle everything alone that you have forgotten that there is another way to live. Nathan stared at her, stunned by the accuracy of her assessment. You got all that from one horse ride. I am observant, and I have known men like you before. You are not as complicated as you think you are. For some reason, that observation hurt more than it should have. Nathan took Sterling's reins without another word and mounted up. He was about to ride off when Tess called out. Nathan, when you find your horse, come back here. I will have dinner ready. You look like you have not had a proper meal in weeks. I cannot impose. It is not an imposition. It is an invitation. There is a difference. She paused. Unless you have somewhere else you need to be. Nathan thought about his empty ranch, the cold beans he would eat from a can while he did his evening chores, the hours of silence broken only by the sound of the wind and the occasional coyote. He thought about the effort it would take to make conversation, to be present with another person, to pretend he was something other than the solitary man he had become. But he also thought about the way Tess had not hesitated to help him, the directness of her speech, the challenge in her green eyes. What time? He asked. Sundown. Do not be late. I hate it when food gets cold. Nathan nodded and rode off before he could change his mind. He found his horse about 2 miles out, grazing peacefully in a small valley as if nothing dramatic had happened. The animal barely looked up as Nathan approached, which was somehow both irritating and amusing. He rode back to his ranch, left both horses in the barn with feed and water, then stood in his empty house trying to remember the last time he had been to dinner at someone else's home. It had been years, probably. After his parents died when he was 20, Nathan had retreated into himself, focusing on building up his ranch, on proving that he could make it on his own. He had convinced himself that relationships were a distraction, that the effort required to maintain them was better spent on tangible things, fences, cattle, land. But lately, the silence had been feeling less like peace and more like emptiness. Nathan changed into cleaner clothes, slicked back his dark hair, and rode Sterling back toward town. The sun was just touching the horizon when he arrived at Tess's house. He could smell something cooking, something that made his stomach remind him forcefully that he had not eaten since dawn. He knocked on the door, feeling suddenly nervous in a way he had not felt in years. Tess opened the door, and for a moment, Nathan forgot whatever he had been planning to say. She had changed into a simple blue dress, and her hair was down around her shoulders in soft waves. She was smiling, a genuine expression of welcome that hit him harder than he wanted to admit. "You came," she said. "I was half expecting you to find some excuse to stay away. I borrowed your horse, had to return him. You could have just tied him up outside and ridden off." "That would have been rude. So you have manners somewhere under all that prickly independence. Good to know." She stepped aside. "Come in, dinner is almost ready." The inside of the house was warm and welcoming, with simple but comfortable furniture and the kind of lived-in feel that Nathan's own house lacked. A man sat in a chair by the fireplace, and he looked up as Nathan entered. "Dad, this is Nathan Foster. Nathan, my father, William Dalton." William was in his 50s, with gray threading through his dark hair and the weathered look of a man who had spent most of his life working outdoors. He stood and shook Nathan's hand with a firm grip. "Tess told me what happened today," William said. "Glad she came along when she did." "As am I," Nathan replied. "She saved my life, though I am not sure she would put it that dramatically." "I would not," Tess called from where she was setting dishes on the table. "You would have thought of something eventually. I just sped up the process." William chuckled. "My daughter has never been one for false modesty. Please sit. Tess has been cooking all afternoon, and she gets irritable if her efforts go unappreciated." They sat down to a meal of roast chicken, potatoes, and vegetables from the garden. It was simple fare, but it was cooked with care, and Nathan found himself eating more than he had in recent memory. The conversation flowed easily, mostly led by William and Tess, with Nathan offering occasional comments. He learned that William had been a miner, then a mine foreman, before an injury to his leg had forced him into retirement. They had moved to Yerington 8 months ago, buying this house with William's savings. Tess had been helping her father establish a small freight business, using their wagon and team to haul goods between Yerington and the surrounding ranches and mining camps. "It is not glamorous work," Tess said, "but it keeps us fed and busy. Plus, I like being on the road. Sitting still makes me restless." "Tess takes after her mother that way," William said, and there was something in his tone that made Nathan glance at him. "Alice was always moving, always doing. She passed 5 years ago, fever that the doctors could not treat." "I am sorry," Nathan said, and meant it. "Thank you. It has been hard, but we manage. We have each other, and that counts for a lot." Nathan noticed the way Tess reached over and squeezed her father's hand, the simple affection in the gesture. It was so different from his own experience. His parents had been good people, but they had not been demonstrative. Affection had been something implied rather than expressed, something that required effort and intention. After dinner, Nathan helped clear the dishes despite Tess's protests. William excused himself to bed, claiming his leg was bothering him, though Nathan suspected he was simply giving them privacy. "He likes you," Tess said as she washed dishes and Nathan dried them. "My father is a good judge of character. I did not do much to be judged on. I mostly just ate and listened." "Exactly. You did not try too hard to impress him. You were just yourself. That matters." Nathan thought about that as he dried a plate. Just yourself. When had he last felt like he could be that with someone? "Can I ask you something?" Tess said, her hands still in the wash water. "Go ahead." "Why do you live the way you do? Alone out there, keeping everyone at a distance?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment, trying to find words for something he had never really examined. "I suppose I always thought that was just how life worked. You work hard, you do not ask for help, you prove your worth through what you accomplish. My father was like that. He built his ranch from nothing, and he did it through sheer determination. I guess I thought I had to do the same." "And has it made you happy?" The question was so direct, so unflinching that Nathan found himself answering honestly. "No, not particularly, but I never thought happiness was the point." "Then what is the point?" "Survival. Success. Proving that I can make it on my own." Tess pulled her hands from the water and dried them on a towel, then turned to face him. "Nathan Foster, that is the saddest thing I have ever heard. We are not meant to make it on our own. We are meant to help each other, to connect with each other. That is what makes life worth living." Says the woman who threatened bandits with dynamite. "I threatened them to protect someone else. There is a difference between being capable and being alone." Nathan had no answer for that. He finished drying the last dish and set it aside, suddenly aware of how close they were standing in the small kitchen. "I should go," he said. "It is getting late." "Will you come back?" Tess asked. "Not as an obligation, just if you want to." Nathan looked at her, at the hope in her green eyes, and felt something shift inside him. The careful walls he had built around himself seemed suddenly less important than the possibility standing in front of him. "I would like that," he said. "If you are sure." "I am always sure. It is one of my more annoying qualities, according to my father." Nathan smiled, a real smile that felt strange and good on his face. "I will come back, maybe in a few days, whenever you want. The door is always open." He rode back to his ranch under a sky full of stars, his mind churning with thoughts he had not allowed himself to have in years. Tess Dalton had, in the span of a few hours, made him question everything he thought he knew about how life should be lived. Over the following weeks, Nathan found himself returning to the Dalton house more often than he had intended. At first, he told himself he was just being polite, returning the favor of the dinner invitation. Then he told himself he was helping William with some repairs around the property, which was technically true but not the real reason. The real reason, which Nathan was slow to admit even to himself, was that he wanted to see Tess. Being around her was different from anything he had experienced before. With other people, Nathan had always felt like he was performing, putting in deliberate effort to say the right things, to maintain the appropriate level of interest and engagement. It was exhausting, which was why he had stopped doing it years ago. But with Tess, conversation felt natural. They could talk about practical things, like the best feed for horses or the upcoming cattle auction, and somehow those mundane topics felt interesting. They could also talk about deeper things, about their hopes and fears and the way they saw the world, and Nathan found himself sharing thoughts he had never spoken aloud before. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after their first meeting, Nathan was helping Tess load her wagon with supplies to deliver to a mining camp north of town. It was hot work under the Nevada sun, and they fell into an easy rhythm, passing crates and sacks back and forth. "You know, you are pretty good at this," Tess said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Ever think about giving up ranching and joining the freight business? I think one of us needs to be good at ranching, considering you are hauling supplies to my ranch every other week." "Fair point. Although I have to say, you are my favorite customer. You always have coffee ready when I arrive, and you actually help unload instead of standing around watching me work. That seems like a low bar for favorite customer. You would be surprised." Old man Patterson once sat in his rocking chair drinking lemonade while I unloaded 300 pounds of grain by myself. Did not even offer me a glass of water. Nathan shook his head. "That is just poor manners." "That is what I said. My father had to talk me out of charging him double." They finished loading the wagon, and Tess secured the canvas cover over the supplies. She had been making these runs alone since William's leg had been bothering him more lately, and Nathan did not like the idea of her traveling the lonely roads by herself. "Want some company?" Nathan asked, the words coming out before he had fully thought them through. "I have nothing pressing this afternoon." Tess looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "You do not have to do that. I know, but I want to, unless you prefer traveling alone. No, I just—" She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "I do not want you to feel obligated. I can tell this is hard for you, being around people, spending time on things that are not directly related to your work. I do not want to be another obligation in your life." Her perceptiveness caught him off guard, as it often did. "You are not an obligation, Tess, you are." He stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. What was she? A friend? That word felt inadequate, something more. He was not ready to examine that too closely. "I am what?" she prompted gently. "Someone I enjoy spending time with. Is that allowed?" A smile spread across her face, bright and genuine. "Yes, Nathan Foster. That is very much allowed. Come on, then. We can talk on the way, and you can tell me more about why you think affection should be so much work." They climbed onto the wagon seat, and Tess guided the horses onto the road heading north. The landscape around them was stark and beautiful, all red rock and scattered sage brush, with mountains rising in the distance. "I never said affection should be work," Nathan protested. "You do not have to say it. Everything about you says it. You approach caring about people like it is a job to be done, a task to be completed with sufficient effort. And you think that is wrong. I think it is exhausting. Do you put this much effort into breathing, into making your heart beat? That is different. Those things are automatic." "Exactly my point. Caring about people should be automatic too. You should not have to constantly remind yourself to do it or manufacture feelings that are not there." Nathan considered this as they rolled along. "So you think affection should just happen naturally, without any work at all?" "I think genuine affection does happen naturally. You meet someone and you either connect with them or you do not. Sure, relationships take work to maintain, but the foundation, the actual caring, that should be effortless. If you have to force it, you are probably with the wrong person." "That sounds like a nice theory, but I do not think it works that way in real life." "Why not?" "Because people are complicated. Relationships are complicated. Nothing in life is truly effortless." "I disagree. Some things are effortless, like right now. We are talking, sharing ideas, and I am not having to work at being interested in what you think. I genuinely want to know, does this feel like effort to you?" Nathan opened his mouth to say yes, because surely it must be effort. He was engaging in conversation and being present and all those things that usually drained him. But then he stopped, because the honest answer was no. This did not feel like effort. It felt easy, natural, like something he could do for hours without getting tired. "No," he admitted quietly. "It does not. There you go. Effortless. Maybe you have just been around the wrong people, Nathan. Maybe it is not that affection requires effort. Maybe it is that you have been trying to manufacture affection with people you do not actually connect with. They rode in silence for a while, and Nathan found himself thinking about his past relationships. There had been a woman, Sarah, a few years back, the daughter of a rancher from the next town over. Everyone had assumed they would end up married, and Nathan had tried. He had courted her properly, taken her to church socials, said all the right things. But it had felt like work, every interaction carefully calculated, and eventually they had drifted apart. He had assumed the failure was his, that he was simply not built for relationships. But maybe Tess was right. Maybe it was not him. Maybe it was just that he and Sarah had not truly connected. They reached the mining camp around mid-afternoon. It was a rough collection of tents and temporary structures, where about 40 men were working a silver claim. The foreman, a grizzled man named Jack Cooper, helped them unload while his men took a break from their work. "Good to see you, Miss Dalton," Jack said. "And you brought help this time, smart. This is Nathan Foster. He has a ranch south of Yarrington." Jack shook Nathan's hand. "Foster, I have heard of you. People say you run a tight operation." "I try to keep busy," Nathan replied. They finished unloading and accepted Jack's offer of coffee before the return trip. Sitting in the shade of the cook tent, Nathan watched Tess interact with the miners. She was at ease with them, joking and trading stories, but she also commanded respect. These were rough men, but they treated her with courtesy and listened when she spoke. On the ride back, as the sun began its descent, Tess said, "You were quiet back there. I was thinking." "About what?" "About you. How you move through the world so easily. People respond to you. You do not seem to work at it at all." "I do not work at it because I am not trying to be anyone other than who I am. I think people can sense that. When you are genuine, they respond to genuine. When you are performing, they respond to performance. And what am I doing with most people? Performing with me. You are starting to be genuine, and it suits you much better." Nathan let that sink in. The wagon rolled along the darkening road, and he found himself very aware of Tess beside him, the way her shoulder occasionally brushed against his as the wagon hit bumps, the sound of her breathing, the faint scent of soap and sage. "Tess," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "Why do you spend time with me? You could have anyone in that town. Hell, half those miners would probably marry you tomorrow if you gave them any encouragement." She was quiet for a moment, her eyes on the road ahead. "Do you really not know? I would not ask if I did." "Because being around you feels easy, Nathan. Even when you are being stubborn and difficult, even when you are arguing with me about whether affection requires effort. I like you. Not the person you think you should be, but the actual you. The man who helps unload wagons without being asked, who listens more than he talks, who is brave enough to admit when he does not have all the answers. That man is worth knowing." Nathan felt something in his chest tighten and release all at once. "I like you too," he said, and the words felt inadequate for what he was actually feeling, but they were true. Tess smiled. "Good. Then stop making it so complicated. We enjoy each other's company. Let that be enough for now." They returned to Yarrington as night fell. Nathan helped Tess stable her horses and check the wagon, even though he knew she was perfectly capable of doing it herself. He realized he was looking for excuses to stay, to stretch out these last few minutes of the day. "Come inside," Tess said when they finished. "Have dinner with us." "I have imposed enough." "Nathan, stop thinking of it as imposing. We want you here. My father asks about you when you do not come by, and I—" She paused, meeting his eyes in the lamplight spilling from the house. "I miss you when you are not around." Those words did something to Nathan, broke through some last defense he had been maintaining. "I miss you too," he said, and realized it was the truest thing he had said in years. Over the next few months, Nathan found himself spending more time in Yarrington than at his ranch. He hired a couple of hands to help with the daily work, which gave him the freedom to pursue something other than constant labor for the first time in his adult life. He and Tess fell into a pattern. He would help her with deliveries several times a week, and they would spend the long hours on the road talking about everything and nothing. He learned about her childhood moving from town to town, about her mother who had been strong and fierce and had taught Tess to be the same. She learned about his parents' death, about the loneliness that had driven him to work harder and harder, trying to fill the emptiness with accomplishment. William gave his blessing to the courtship, though Nathan and Tess had not formally called it that. "My daughter is happy," he told Nathan one evening. "She smiles more, worries less. Whatever you two have, I am grateful for it." It was on a warm evening in late August, about 4 months after they first met, that everything changed. They were sitting on the porch of the Dalton house, watching the sun set over the mountains. William had gone to bed early, leaving them alone in the fading light. "I have been thinking," Tess said, her hand resting near Nathan's on the porch railing, "about what I said when we first met. About effort and affection. What about it? I think I was wrong. Not completely wrong, but wrong about one thing." Nathan turned to look at her. "What is that?" "I said that genuine affection should be effortless, and I still believe that is true, but I think—" She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. "I think maybe the miracle is when you start out thinking that affection will require effort, and then you meet someone who makes it effortless. When everything you thought would be hard becomes easy because of who they are." "Are you saying I make things easy for you?" "I am saying that being with you is the easiest thing I have ever done. And I think maybe it has become easier for you too." Nathan took her hand, lacing their fingers together. The gesture felt natural, inevitable, like it had been waiting to happen since the moment they met. "It has. You have changed everything for me, Tess. I spent years believing that I was not built for this, that caring about someone was too much work, too much risk. And then you came along and made me realize I was not the problem. I had just been alone, waiting for the right person." "And have you found the right person?" she asked, her voice soft. "I am looking at her." Tess smiled, and in the dying light, Nathan thought he had never seen anything more beautiful. "Good answer, Cowboy." He leaned in and kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper as she responded. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing harder. "I love you," Nathan said, and the words came out effortlessly, without thought or calculation. "I think I have loved you since you threatened those bandits with dynamite." Tess laughed, her eyes bright with tears. "I love you too, even when you are being stubborn." "Especially when I am being stubborn." "No, just despite it. But I will take you any way I can get you." They sat together as night fell completely, talking about the future in a way Nathan had never allowed himself to before. They talked about combining her freight business with his ranch, about building a life together, about all the possibilities that lay ahead. 2 months later, they were married in a simple ceremony in Yarrington. William walked Tess down the aisle, his eyes wet with tears. The whole town turned out, including Mrs. Henderson, who cried through the entire service, and old man Garrett, who gave them a silver picture frame as a wedding gift. Nathan moved into the Dalton house, and William moved into a smaller place nearby, giving the newlyweds their privacy while still remaining close. Nathan kept his ranch running with his hired hands, but he also threw himself into helping Tess expand the freight business. They made a good team, anticipating each other's needs, working in easy harmony. The first year of their marriage was full of adjustments and discoveries. They learned each other's habits and rhythms, learned how to navigate disagreements without damaging what they had built. Nathan learned that he could be himself, completely and utterly himself, without fear of rejection or judgment. He learned that love did not have to be a performance or a careful exercise in meeting expectations. One evening, about a year after their wedding, they were lying in bed after a long day of work. Tess was curled against Nathan's side, her hand resting on his chest. "You remember what you told me the night we met?" she asked. "About how you thought affection required effort." "I remember." "I was wrong." "You were not completely wrong. Love does require effort sometimes. It requires showing up, being present, choosing each other even when things are hard. But the foundation, the actual caring." She tilted her head to look up at him. "That should be effortless, and it is with you." "Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done." Nathan kissed the top of her head, feeling a contentment he had never imagined possible. "I used to think I had to work so hard at everything because that is what gave life meaning. Work, achievement, accomplishment. But you taught me that the best things in life, the things that truly matter, they do not feel like work at all." "So what do they feel like? Like coming home, like breathing, like this?" Tess smiled against his chest. "Like this," she repeated softly. Their second year of marriage brought both challenges and joys. A drought tested the ranch, and they had to make difficult decisions about the herd. The freight business expanded, bringing more work but also more income. Through it all, Nathan and Tess supported each other, their partnership deepening with each shared challenge. William's health began to decline. The old mining injury to his leg worsened, and by the winter of their third year together, he was largely confined to his small house. Nathan and Tess took turns caring for him, and Nathan was grateful that he had learned to be present for people, to show up without resentment or obligation. One cold December evening, William called them both to his bedside. He looked frail, but his eyes were clear. "I do not have much longer," he said, and held up a hand when Tess started to protest. "We all know it, so let us not pretend. I need to say something while I still can." "Dad, please," Tess said, her voice breaking. "Hush and listen." "Nathan, you came into our lives when I was worried about what would happen to Tess when I was gone. She is strong, my girl, but everyone needs someone. I thank God that she found you, and that you had the good sense to realize what you had found in her." "I am the lucky one," Nathan said quietly. "You both are. That is how it should be. Two people who make each other better, who face life together instead of alone." He reached out and took their hands, joining them together. "Take care of each other. Love each other well. That is all any of us can do in this life." William Dalton passed away 3 days later, peacefully in his sleep. Tess grieved deeply, and Nathan held her through it, learning that sometimes the most important thing he could do was simply be there, solid and steady, while she processed her loss. After the funeral, Tess threw herself into work with an intensity that worried Nathan. She was up before dawn and working until long after dark, taking every freight job she could find, pushing herself to exhaustion. One night, Nathan stopped her as she was preparing to leave for yet another delivery, this one that would take her away for 3 days. "Tess, you need to slow down. I need to keep moving." "No, you need to stop running. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to sit still and feel sad." "If I sit still, it hurts too much." Nathan took the harness from her hands and set it aside, then pulled her into his arms. She resisted for a moment, then collapsed against him, sobbing in a way she had not since the funeral. "I know it hurts," Nathan said, holding her tight. "I know it feels like working will make it better. But I learned something from you, Tess. I learned that some things cannot be worked through. Some things just have to be felt. And you do not have to feel them alone. I am here. Let me help carry this." They stood there in the barn for a long time, Nathan holding Tess while she cried. It was not the first time he had comforted her in the months since William's death, but it was the first time she had truly let him in, had truly allowed herself to be vulnerable. Later, as they walked back to the house together, Tess said, "I do not know what I would do without you. Good thing you do not have to find out. Nathan Foster, do you realize how far you have come? From the man who thought he had to handle everything alone to the man who just told me I do not have to handle my grief alone. I had a good teacher. I think we taught each other." Spring came, bringing renewal to the land and to their lives. Tess slowly emerged from her grief, still sad but no longer running from it. They sold William's house and used the money to expand their operations, buying more freight wagons and hiring drivers. It was on a warm May evening, as they were going over the account books together, that Tess suddenly set down her pencil and looked at Nathan with an odd expression. "What?" he asked. "I am pregnant." Nathan stared at her, the words not quite registering. "You are." "I am. I missed my monthly courses and I have been feeling sick in the mornings. I am fairly certain." A smile spread across Nathan's face, so wide it almost hurt. "We are going to have a baby." "We are going to have a baby," Tess confirmed. And then they were both laughing and crying at the same time, holding each other in the lamplight of their small office. The pregnancy was not easy. Tess was sick for the first few months, and Nathan learned to cook properly for the first time in his life, determined to make sure she ate enough. She chafed at the restrictions on her activities, frustrated that she could no longer make the longer freight runs. "I feel useless," she complained one afternoon, standing at the window watching one of their drivers prepare to leave. "You are growing a human being inside you," Nathan replied. "That is hardly useless. You know what I mean. I am used to being active, being useful." Nathan came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her swelling middle. "You are useful. You are doing the most important thing we will ever do, creating our family." Tess leaned back against him. "When did you become so good with words?" "When I stopped working so hard at saying the right thing and started just saying what I feel." Their son was born on a cold January night in 1886, after 18 hours of labor that nearly stopped Nathan's heart with worry. But when he finally held the red-faced, squalling infant, he understood what people meant when they talked about love at first sight. They named him William, after Tess's father. Little Will had his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair, and from the moment he entered the world, he made his presence known with powerful lungs and a strong will. Parenthood brought a whole new set of challenges and joys. Nathan discovered reserves of patience he did not know he had, walking the floor with a colicky baby at 3 in the morning. Tess navigated nursing and sleepless nights while still trying to manage the business. They were exhausted and overwhelmed and happier than they had ever been. "I do not know how people do this alone," Nathan said one night after they had finally gotten Will to sleep. "I could not imagine trying to handle this by myself." "Good thing we are in it together," Tess replied, practically falling into bed beside him. "Partnership makes everything possible." As Will grew from infant to toddler, Nathan watched his son with amazement. The boy was fearless and curious, getting into everything, testing boundaries with the same determination his parents showed in their business ventures. One afternoon, when Will was about 2 years old, Nathan found him in the barn trying to climb onto one of the horses. He scooped up his son before disaster could strike. "Not yet, little man. You need to be bigger first." "I am big," Will protested. "Bigger than this." "But I will teach you to ride, I promise, when you are ready." That night, as Nathan was putting Will to bed, the boy looked up at him with serious eyes. "Daddy, do you love me? More than anything in the world. Why do you ask?" "Just wanted to know." Nathan kissed his son's forehead. "I will always love you, Will. No matter what." That is what family means. As Will drifted off to sleep, Nathan sat by his bedside, thinking about how much his life had changed. 5 years ago, he had been alone, convinced that he was better off that way, that relationships were too much work. Now he had a wife he adored, a son he would die for, a business that was thriving, and a life that felt full in ways he had not known were possible. Tess appeared in the doorway, watching them with a soft smile. Nathan joined her in the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind him. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how wrong I was, about everything." "Everything. I thought I needed to work so hard to earn love, to deserve affection. I thought relationships were obligations, tasks to be managed. But you taught me that real love, true affection, it does not feel like work at all." Tess took his hand. "It felt like work at first, though, did it not? Learning to open up, learning to trust. At first, maybe. But that was me fighting against myself, fighting against what I really wanted. Once I stopped fighting, once I let myself just be with you, it became effortless." I like that word. Effortless. That is what this feels like. She gestured around them, encompassing their home, their sleeping son, their life together. "It is not that we do not work hard. We work very hard. But loving each other, being together, that is the easy part." They stood together in the quiet hallway, and Nathan felt a peace he had never known in his younger years. This was what life was supposed to be. Not solitary struggle, not constant effort to prove worth, but partnership and love and the easy joy of sharing everything with someone who understood you completely. The years continued to pass, bringing more changes and growth. When Will was 4, Tess discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she was less sick but more tired, running after an energetic preschooler while growing another baby. Their daughter was born on a bright summer day in 1890. They named her Alice after Tess's mother, and she was the opposite of her brother in almost every way. Where Will was loud and bold, Alice was quiet and thoughtful. Where Will charged into situations, Alice observed first. Nathan fell in love all over again, this tiny girl who watched him with solemn eyes and smiled so rarely that each smile felt like a precious gift. "We make good babies," Tess observed one evening, nursing Alice while Will showed Nathan a picture he had drawn. "We make a good team," Nathan corrected. "In everything." The freight business continued to grow. They now had 6 wagons and 8 drivers, covering routes throughout western Nevada. The ranch was thriving too, with a substantial herd and a reputation for quality cattle. Nathan and Tess had become respected members of the Yerington community, though they still kept mostly to themselves and their family. "I do not need a lot of people in my life," Nathan explained to Tess one evening. "I just need the right ones. And I am one of the right ones. You are the rightest one. That is not a word. It should be." When Will turned 7, Nathan began teaching him to ride and to help with the ranch work. He watched his son's face light up with pride when he successfully completed a task, and Nathan remembered what it felt like to believe that accomplishment was everything. "Will," he said one afternoon after they had finished repairing a section of fence, "you did good work today. I am proud of you." "Thanks, Dad. But I want you to know something. I am proud of you whether you do good work or not. I am proud of you because you are my son and I love you. Your worth is not about what you accomplish, it is about who you are." Will looked confused. "But you always say hard work is important." "It is important, but it is not everything. People are more important. Relationships are more important. Do not make the mistake I made when I was young, thinking that work is all that matters. What matters is the people you love and who love you back. Like you and Mom and Alice. Exactly like that." As Will grew older, Nathan saw glimpses of his younger self in his son. The tendency to take on too much, the stubborn independence, the belief that asking for help was weakness. He and Tess worked to gently guide Will toward a healthier understanding of strength and self-reliance. Alice, meanwhile, was growing into a remarkable child. She loved books and animals, and she had a gift for understanding people's feelings. At 5 years old, she already seemed wiser than her years. One evening, she climbed into Nathan's lap and said, "Daddy, why do you and Mama smile at each other so much?" "Because we are happy together. Because we love each other." "Will I find someone to smile at like that someday?" "I hope so, sweet girl, when you are much, much older." "How will I know when I find them?" Nathan thought about that, remembering the day a woman with dynamite had changed his life. "You will know because being with them will feel easy. Not easy like taking the simple path, but easy like breathing. Like it is exactly where you are supposed to be." In 1895, when Will was 9 and Alice was 5, they had a scare that reminded Nathan how precious their life together was. Will fell from a horse and broke his arm. It was not life-threatening, but for the hours between the accident and the doctor confirming that Will would be fine, Nathan was reminded of how quickly everything could change. That night, after Will was asleep with his arm in a sling, Nathan held Tess close. "I cannot imagine losing any of you," he said. "This life we have built, this family, it is everything to me. I know. But we cannot live in fear of loss. We just have to appreciate what we have while we have it." "How did you get so wise?" "I married a man who taught me that opening your heart is worth the risk. I thought I was the one who learned that from you. Maybe we both learned it, together." As the century drew to a close, Nathan found himself reflecting on the changes in his life. He was 41 years old, with a wife he adored, 2 healthy children, and a successful business. The lonely, isolated man he had been at 26 seemed like a stranger now. One evening, he and Tess took a rare moment alone, riding out to the spot where she had first saved him from the bandits. It had been over 15 years, but Nathan remembered it like yesterday. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Stopping that day, you could have ridden past, let me handle it on my own, and miss out on all of this." "Never. Besides, I had a good feeling about you from the start. Even though I was surly and ungrateful, especially because of that. I knew there was something more underneath all that prickly independence. I just had to dig a little to find it." Nathan dismounted and helped Tess down, and they stood looking out over the desert landscape, painted gold and red in the setting sun. "I spent so many years thinking that affection required effort," Nathan said. "That I had to work at it, maintain it, prove I deserved it. And then you came along and showed me that real affection, true love, it is not like that at all." "What is it like?" "It is like this. Easy, natural, right. I do not have to work to love you, Tess. It is just who I am now. Loving you is as much a part of me as breathing." Tess turned to face him, her green eyes bright with tears. "Nathan Foster, after 15 years of marriage, you can still make me cry. Is that good or bad?" "It is good. It is very good." They kissed as the sun touched the horizon. 2 people who had found in each other what they had not even known they were looking for. The new century brought more changes. Will, at 14, was already showing signs of the man he would become. He had inherited his father's work ethic, but also his mother's ease with people. He was talking about expanding the business, about new routes and new opportunities. Alice, at 10, was quieter but no less determined. She had announced that she wanted to be a teacher, and she spent hours reading and helping the younger children in town with their letters. Nathan and Tess watched their children grow with pride and a touch of sadness. They knew that soon enough, Will and Alice would be building their own lives, making their own choices. "We did well," Tess said one evening, watching Will teach Alice to rope a fence post in the yard. "We did. They are good kids. They are good because they know they are loved. Not because of what they do or what they accomplish, but just because of who they are. I hope they remember that. I hope they do not make the mistakes I made. If they do, they will have us to help them find their way back. That is what family is for. In 1902, when Nathan was 44 and Tess was 40, they celebrated their 18th wedding anniversary. The freight business was now one of the largest in western Nevada, and the ranch was prospering. But more than any material success, Nathan treasured the life they had built together. They had a party at the house, with Will and Alice helping to prepare food and decorate. Friends from town came by to celebrate, though Nathan still preferred small gatherings to large ones. As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Nathan found Tess standing on the porch, looking up at the stars. "Thinking about something?" he asked, joining her. "Just remembering. It has been quite a journey, has it not? The best journey I could have imagined." "Better than I deserved. Do not say that. You deserve every bit of happiness you have. You worked for it in your own way." "I did not work for you, though. You just happened to me like grace I did not know I needed." Tess leaned her head on his shoulder. "I think we happened to each other. Two stubborn, determined people who were heading in the wrong directions until we collided. And you think we are heading in the right direction now. I know we are, because we are heading there together." The years continued to pass, bringing the joys and sorrows that make up a life fully lived. Will fell in love at 19 with a girl named Mary, and Nathan recognized in his son's face the same wonder he had felt when he realized he loved Tess. They were married a year later, and Nathan gained a daughter-in-law who fit seamlessly into their family. Alice showed no interest in romance, focused entirely on her studies and her dream of teaching. Nathan supported her completely, proud of her independence and determination. "She reminds me of you," Tess said, watching Alice help at the schoolhouse. "Single-minded and sure of what she wants." "She reminds me of you," Nathan countered. "Strong and unwilling to let anyone else define her path. Maybe she is the best of both of us. Definitely the best." In 1907, Will and Mary presented Nathan and Tess with their first grandchild, a boy they named Nathan William. Holding his tiny grandson, Nathan was overwhelmed by the continuation of love across generations. "I never imagined this," he told Tess that night. "Being a grandfather. Having this much family. And now you cannot imagine life any other way." "No, I cannot. You gave me this, Tess. You gave me everything. We gave it to each other. That is how it works when two people truly love each other. It multiplies, spreads out to encompass more and more until you have built something bigger than either of you could have created alone." Nathan pulled her close, marveling as he always did at how easy it still felt. Nearly a quarter-century together, and loving her was still as effortless as that first kiss on the porch. Alice eventually did marry, though not until she was 28. She chose a quiet man named Thomas who respected her intelligence and supported her work as a teacher. Their wedding was small but joyful, and Nathan cried as he walked his daughter down the aisle, remembering the serious little girl who had asked him how she would know when she found the right person. "You were right, Daddy," she whispered as they reached the altar. "It does feel like breathing." The business continued to thrive under Will's management, and Nathan gradually stepped back, content to let his son take over while he and Tess enjoyed a slower pace of life. They spent their days working in the garden, riding out to their favorite spots, and spoiling their growing number of grandchildren. In 1915, as Nathan approached his 57th birthday, he and Tess took a trip back to the spot where they had first met. They did this every few years, a pilgrimage to remember where their story had begun, standing there, with silver threading through both their hair now and lines of laughter and life etched into their faces. Nathan marveled at the journey. "You remember what I was like when we met?" he asked. "I remember a stubborn man who thought he had to do everything alone, a man who believed that affection required constant effort and work. And what did you see in that man?" "I saw someone who was exhausted from trying so hard. Someone who was ready to learn a different way, even if he did not know it yet." Nathan turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "You changed everything for me, Tess. You taught me that love should not feel like work, that the right relationship with the right person, it just flows. It is effortless." "Not always effortless," Tess corrected gently. "We have had our challenges, our difficult times. But loving you through those times never felt like effort. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. That is what I did not understand before you. I thought all relationships would be difficult, would require me to manufacture feelings and force connections. But with you, it was just there. From the moment you threatened those bandits with dynamite, I think some part of me knew I had found something I did not know I was looking for." "And what was that? Home, partnership, effortless affection. You." Tess's eyes filled with tears, and she smiled the smile that still made Nathan's heart skip after all these years. "Nathan Foster, you are still the most romantic man I know, even if it took you a while to discover it. I am only romantic because you made it safe to be. You created a space where I could be vulnerable, could express feelings without fear of judgment or rejection. Everything I am now, everything good in my life, it started with you." They kissed there, in the spot where she had saved him in more ways than one, and Nathan felt the same rush of rightness that he had felt with every kiss over the past 31 years. As they rode home in the fading light, Nathan reflected on the irony of his younger self. He had believed so firmly that affection required effort, that relationships were work to be maintained through constant vigilance and deliberate action. And in a way, he had not been completely wrong. Relationships did require showing up, being present, choosing your partner every day. But the fundamental feeling, the core of love itself, that should not require effort. That should flow naturally, easily, like water finding its path down a mountain. And with Tess, it always had. The effort he had expended in his youth had not been about maintaining love. It had been about trying to force love where it did not naturally exist, trying to manufacture connection with people he did not truly bond with. No wonder it had felt exhausting. With Tess, the love was effortless. The showing up was a joy, not a burden. The being present was natural because he wanted to be there. The choosing her was easy because she was the only one he could ever choose. That was the revelation that had transformed his life. Not that relationships did not require any work, but that the right relationship made the work feel like pleasure. The right person turned effort into effortlessness. In the spring of 1918, Nathan and Tess celebrated their 36th wedding anniversary surrounded by their children, their grandchildren, and a few close friends. Will was running the freight business successfully, having expanded into new territories. Alice was respected throughout the region for her teaching. Their grandchildren ranged from infant to teenager, a whole new generation carrying forward the legacy of love and partnership that Nathan and Tess had built. As the party wound down, Nathan found himself alone with Tess in their garden, the same garden they had tended together for over 3 decades. "What are you thinking about?" Tess asked, settling onto the bench beside him. "About how much I love my life, our life. Any regrets?" "Only one. I regret all those years before I met you, all that time I wasted believing I was better off alone. Those years made you who you are. Without them, you might not have appreciated what we found together. Maybe. Or maybe I was just stubborn and needed a woman with dynamite to show me the error of my ways. Tess laughed, the sound as bright and clear as it had been when she was 22. I do not think I have had to use dynamite on you in years. No, you found more subtle ways to get your point across. Such as? Such as just being yourself. Such as showing me every day what love is supposed to look like. You never had to force it or fake it. You just loved me steadily and surely until I learned how to love you back the same way. You always knew how to love, Nathan. You just had to learn to trust it. They sat together as the sun set, hands clasped, comfortable in the silence that only comes after decades of companionship. This was the life Nathan had never imagined for himself, the life he had not even known to want. And it had all started with a chance encounter on a dusty road, a woman who refused to let him face danger alone, and the gradual realization that affection did not have to be work. The right person made it effortless. The seasons continued to turn, bringing the inevitable changes that time brings to all lives. In 1920, William's health began to decline. He was 62, and a lifetime of ranch work had taken its toll on his body. Nathan faced his own mortality through his son's struggles, grateful for every day he still had with Tess by his side. On a cold December morning in 1921, with his family gathered around him, William passed peacefully. He was holding Mary's hand, his children present, his grandchildren nearby. Nathan grieved the loss but also recognized the blessing. His son had lived a full life, loved and been loved, and had gone surrounded by family. "This is what matters," Nathan said to Alice after the funeral. "Not what we accomplish or how much we acquire. This, family, love, connection." "I know, Dad. You and Mom taught us that from the beginning." "I wish I had known it from my beginning. I wasted so much time." Alice hugged him tightly. "But you figured it out eventually. That is what counts. And you built something beautiful. Look at all of us. We are all here because you and Mom found each other and created this family." The loss of Will was hard, but Nathan and Tess had each other to lean on. They had weathered storms before, and they would weather this one too. That was what partnership meant. As Nathan approached his 65th birthday in 1923, he found himself slowing down more. His body did not move as easily as it once had, and there were days when the old ranch work felt beyond him. But Tess was always there, adapting their life to accommodate their aging bodies while still maintaining the essential connection that had always defined them. One evening, sitting on their porch and watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard, Nathan said, "I never thought I would live to see this." "Great-grandchildren?" Tess asked. "All of this? A long life, a happy life?" "When I was young, I thought I would grow old alone, maybe respected but not loved. I thought that was just my fate. And now I know that fate had nothing to do with it. I was alone because I chose to be, because I believed that was easier than risking connection. You taught me differently." "We taught each other. I learned from you too, you know." "What could you possibly have learned from me? You were already so much wiser than I was." Tess smiled. "I learned patience. I learned that some people need time to open up and that the wait is worth it. I learned that the quieter loves are often the deepest ones. You showed me that every day." They sat together as they had sat so many evenings before, hands clasped, hearts entwined, watching the legacy of their love play out in the generations before them. In the summer of 1925, Nathan suffered a minor stroke. It left him weaker but still mentally sharp, and Tess nursed him back to as much health as he could recover. Alice and Mary took turns helping, bringing food and company, but it was Tess who was his constant companion. "You do not have to stay with me all the time," Nathan protested one afternoon. "You should get out, see people." "Where else would I want to be?" Tess replied. Nathan Foster, I have spent 43 years by your side. I am not going to stop now just because you need a little extra help. This is not what you signed up for when you saved that stubborn cowboy on the road. I signed up for all of it. The good days and the hard days. In sickness and in health, remember, those were not just words. Nathan reached for her hand, his grip not as strong as it once was but still sure. I love you, Tess, more now than even when we started. That is because you finally learned how to love without working so hard at it. You made it easy. You always made it easy. As Nathan's health continued to decline over the following year, he found himself reflecting more on the life he had lived. He thought about the lonely young man he had been, so convinced that isolation was strength, and that affection was something to be carefully rationed. He thought about Tess appearing like a miracle, teaching him without preaching, showing him through her example that there was another way to live. On a warm September evening in 1926, with Tess beside him and his family gathered close, Nathan felt his time coming to an end. He was not afraid. How could he be afraid when he was surrounded by so much love, the tangible proof that his life had mattered? Tess, he whispered, his voice weak but clear. I am here, my love. I am right here. Thank you for everything, for teaching me how to love. You taught yourself, Nathan. I just gave you the space to learn. No, you gave me more than that. You gave me a reason to want to learn. You made effort become effortless. Tess was crying now, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling too. And you gave me the greatest love story I could have imagined. We had a good life together. The best life. No regrets. Not a single one. Nathan looked around at his family. Alice was there with Thomas, their children and grandchildren surrounding them. Mary was there with her children and grandchildren. The room was full of love, of life, of the legacy he and Tess had created together. I am ready, Nathan said softly. I am at peace. I know you are, and when it is my time I will find you again. Wait for me, always, forever. Nathan closed his eyes, Tess's hand in his, and let go. He had spent the first part of his life believing that everything required effort, that affection was work to be carefully managed and maintained. But Tess had shown him the truth. The right love, with the right person, was effortless. It flowed like water, natural and necessary, as essential as breathing. He had thought affection required effort, but with her, effort had become effortless, and that had made all the difference. Tess sat with him long after he was gone, holding the hand of the man who had transformed from a stubborn, isolated cowboy into the loving husband and father who had been the center of her world for over 4 decades. She grieved deeply, but without regret. They had lived fully, loved completely, and built something that would endure long after they were both gone. 2 years later, on a quiet spring morning, Tess joined Nathan. She was found in her garden, peaceful and still, a smile on her face. Her family laid her to rest beside Nathan, together in death as they had been in life. The legacy they left behind was not in wealth or property, though they had been successful. Their legacy was in love, in the example they had set for their children and grandchildren about what partnership could be. They had shown that the strongest relationships are not the ones that require constant effort, but the ones where love flows naturally, where 2 people complement each other so perfectly that being together is the easiest thing in the world. Their great-great-grandchildren would hear the story of Nathan and Tess, of the cowboy who thought affection required effort, and the woman who taught him that with the right person, effort became effortless. It would become a family legend, a reminder that love should not feel like work, that the right relationship makes even the hard times feel manageable. In Yerington, Nevada, people still talked about the Fosters decades later. They talked about the quiet rancher who had transformed into a devoted family man. They talked about the fearless woman with dynamite who had changed his life. And they talked about the love that had endured for over 40 years, a love that had seemed to grow easier and deeper with each passing day. Because that was the secret Nathan had learned and carried with him until his last breath. Love should not be a burden to bear or a task to complete. Love should be as natural as breathing, as effortless as sunrise. And when you found that kind of love, you held on to it with everything you had, not because it required effort, but because letting go was unthinkable. Nathan Foster had thought affection required effort. Then he met Teresa Dalton, and effort became effortless. Everything else flowed from that single truth, creating a life richer and fuller than he had ever imagined possible. And in the end, that was the greatest love story of all. Not one of dramatic gestures or grand pronouncements, but one of steady, enduring affection that made every day feel like a gift. One of two people who found in each other exactly what they needed and built a life of profound love on that foundation. The cowboy and the woman with dynamite, teaching each other in the world that real love, true love, makes everything effortless, even the effort itself.